Thank you. If I can bring conference to order, please. I've always secretly wanted to be conference chair. Conference, thank you very much for that. Thank you so much for that wonderful welcome and this incredible feeling and spirit and unity and love and affection we have here this week in Brighton. Thank you. Because you know what? It's quite infectious. And let's make sure the whole country's infected with the same thing. So we meet here this week as a united party, advancing in every part of Britain. Winning the confidence of millions of our fellow citizens, setting out our ideas and our plans for our country's future that have already inspired people of all ages and all backgrounds united in this party. And it's a real privilege to be speaking here in Brighton, a city that not only has a long history of hosting Labour conferences, but also of inspirational Labour activists. It was over a century ago, here in Brighton, that a teenage shop worker had had enough of the terrible conditions facing her and her workmates. She risked the sack, she risked losing her job, losing everything, to join the shop workers' union. After she'd learned about the existence of the union from a newspaper that had been used to wrap fish and chips. And she was so effective at standing up for women shop workers, she became the Assistant General Secretary of that union before the age of 30. Young women paving the way. In that role, she seconded the historic resolution at the Trades Union Congress in 1899 to set up the Labour Representation Committee, so that working people would finally have representation in Parliament. The Labour Representation Committee became the Labour Party. And it was this woman, Margaret Bonfield, who later became a Labour MP. And in 1929, the first ever woman to join the British cabinet. From Brighton drapery to Downing Street, Margaret Bonfield's story is a reminder of the decisive role women have always played in the Labour Party from its foundation, and our party in government will take action to close the gender pay gap. We will introduce mandatory equal pay auditing for large employers and give the Equality and Human Rights Commission the funding it needs to drive through the change. Labour has always been about making change, by working together and standing up for all. That is what we are in the Labour Party. Conference against all predictions, in June, we won the largest increase in the Labour vote since 1945. And achieved Labour's best vote for a generation. Its results, which has put the Tories on notice and Labour on the threshold of power. Yes, we didn't do quite well enough, and we remain in opposition for now. become a government in waiting. Our outstanding shadow cabinet team here today, thank you for all you do. Thank you for the work you do. And thank you for the leadership you give to our party and our members. Thank you all of you. You can wave, it's okay. Great colleagues around the table, taking our party and our country forward. And our message to the whole country could not be clearer. Labour is ready. Ready to tackle inequality. Ready to rebuild our National Health Service. Ready to give opportunity. Ready to give opportunity to young people, dignity and security to all older people. Ready to invest in our economy and meet the challenges of climate change and of automation. Ready to put peace and justice at the heart of our foreign policy. And ready to build a new and progressive relationship with Europe. We are ready, and the Tories are clearly not. They're certainly not strong, and they're definitely not stable. And they're hanging on by their fingertips. But this Tory government does have one thing we lack. They have tracked down the magic money tree. It's been found and it's been put to use. I'm not going to say good use, it's been put to use. When it was needed to keep Theresa May in Downing Street, it was given a good old shake. And lo and behold, we now know the price of power. It's approximately £100 million for each Democratic Unionist MP. During the election campaign, Theresa May told voters they faced the threat of a coalition of chaos. Do you remember that? Well, now they're showing us just exactly how that works. I don't just mean the Prime Minister's desperate deal with the DUP. She's got a coalition of chaos all around her cabinet table. Philip Hammond and Liam Fox, Boris Johnson and David Davis, at each other's throats, squabbling and plotting, manoeuvring to bundle the PM out of number 10 and take her place at the first opportunity, instead of getting to grips with the momentous issues facing this country. But this coalition of chaos is no joke. Just look at the record since the Conservatives have been in office. The longest fall in people's pay since records began. Homelessness doubled. Look around the streets of Brighton and every other city and you see the effects of it. NHS waiting lists lengthening, school class sizes growing and teachers leaving. Over 4 million children now living in poverty. 20,000 police officers and 11,000 firefighters lost their jobs because of this government. More people in work and in poverty than ever before. And condemned by the United Nations for violating the rights of disabled people. That's not strong and stable. It's callous and it's calculating. Because the Tories calculated that making life worse for millions in the name of austerity would pay for hefty tax handouts for the rich and powerful. Conference, your efforts in the election campaign stopped the Tories in their tracks. The election result has already delivered one Tory U-turn after another over some, only some, of their most damaging policies. The cruel dementia tax was scrapped within 3 days of it being announced because we challenged it. Plans to bring back grammar schools have been ditched. The threat to the pensions triple lock abandoned. Withdrawal of winter fuel payments dumped. The pledge, such a Tory pledge, to bring back fox hunting was eventually dropped as well. And their plan to end the free school meals that exist in primary schools The reality is this, that Manifesto and tearing itself apart. They're bereft of ideas and they're bereft of energy. We've got plenty of energy, I assure you of that. Seem to be cherry-picking Labour policies instead, including on Brexit. So I say to the Prime Minister, we're very generous, you're welcome. But go the whole hog. End austerity, abolish tuition fees, scrap the public sector pay cap, I think we can find a Commons majority for that. That Commons majority is over there. Thank you. This is a weak and divided government with no purpose beyond clinging to power. It's Labour that's now setting the agenda, winning the arguments for a new common sense about the direction our country should take. My principles come from my mum and dad and the way they brought me up and the principles they gave me. They come from my family, they come from the community I live in and am very proud to represent in Finsbury Park. They're my roots and they ground everything that I do. But, conference, there were two stars of our election campaign. The first was our manifesto, that drew on the ideas of our members and trade unionists and the hopes and the aspirations of communities and workplaces all over the country. And we were clear about how we would pay for it, by asking the richest and the largest corporations to start paying their fair share. Not simply to redistribute within a system that isn't delivering for most people, but to transform that system. So we set out not only how we would protect public services, but how we would rebuild and invest in our economy, with a publicly owned engine of sustainable growth, driven by national and regional investment banks to generate good jobs and real prosperity in every region and nation of this country. Our manifesto is the programme of a modern, progressive socialist party that's rediscovered its roots and purpose, bucking the trend all across Europe. And Conference, the other star of the campaign, was you, all of you. Our members, our supporters, and the trade unions, our doorstep and our social media campaigners, young people sharing messages and stories on social media, hundreds of thousands organising online and on the ground to outplay the Tories' big money machine. Is it any wonder that here today in Brighton, you represent the largest political party in Western Europe? With nearly 600,000 members alongside 3 million affiliated trade unionists, brimming with enthusiasm and confidence in the potential of all of our people, the real potential that is there. You are the future. And let me say straight away, I'm awed and humbled by everything that you've done, along with hundreds of thousands of others across the country, to take us to where we are today. And I've never been more proud to be your elected leader of this party. Our election campaign gave people strength. It brought millions to the electoral register and inspired millions to go to vote for the first time. And Labour was the party of unity, bringing generations and communities together, rather than pitting young and old against each other, which is what the Tories did. We will never seek to squeeze one generation to support another. Under Labour, people win together. The result of our campaign confounded every single skeptic and expert. I see John McDonnell said, at a meeting I was at the other day, he said, the greybeards got it wrong. John, I'm really not sure that is fair. We wiped out the Tory majority, winning support in every social and age group, and gaining seats in every region and nation of the country. So, please, Theresa May, take another walking holiday and make another impetuous decision. The Labour campaign machine is primed and ready to roll. But, of course, there were some people that didn't come out of the election too well. I'm thinking of some of our more traditional media friends. No, come on, we've been kind and gentle here. They ran the campaign they always do, under orders from their tax exile owners to trash Labour at every turn. The day before the election, I remember it well, I was on trains all day long doing 6 rallies. One paper devoted 14 pages to attacking the Labour Party. And the following day, our vote went up nearly 10%. Never have so many trees died in vain. The British people saw right through it. So this is a message to the Daily Mail's editor. No. Next time, please make it 28 pages. But there's a serious message too. The campaign by the Tories and their loyal media was nasty and personal, and it fueled abuse online. And no one was the target of that more than Diane Abbott. Happy birthday, dear Diane. Happy birthday to you. Very good, you stole my line. Diane has a decades-long record of campaigning for social justice, and she's suffered intolerable misogynist and racist abuse. Faced with such an overwhelmingly hostile press and an army of media and social trolls, it's even more important that we stand together. Yes, there will be... Yes, there will be times when we disagree, but there can never, ever be any excuse for any abuse of anybody by anybody. We are not having it, not tolerating it, not accepting it, and not allowing it. Thank you. Thank you for that, because it's very clear. We settle our differences with democratic votes and then unite around those decisions and go forward. That is the Labour Party here this week and out in communities every week. Diverse, welcoming, democratic, and ready to serve our country. There's no bigger test in politics right now than Brexit, an incredibly important and complex process that cannot be reduced to repeating fairy stories from the side of a bus or waiting 15 months to state the obvious. As democratic socialists, we accept and respect the referendum result, but respect for a democratic decision does not mean giving a green light to recklessness. Tory Brexit agenda that would plunge Britain into a Trump-style race to the bottom in rights and corporate taxes, We're not going to be passive spectators to a hopelessly inept negotiating team putting at risk people's jobs, rights and living standards. A team more interested in posturing for personal advantage than in getting the best deal for the country. To be fair, Theresa May's speech in Florence last week did unite the cabinet for a few hours until her plane touched down at Heathrow, before the divisions broke out again. Never was the national interest so ill-served on such a vital issue. If there was no other reason for the Tories to go, their self-interested Brexit bungling would be reason enough. So I have a simple message to the Cabinet. For Britain's sake, pull yourself together or make way. One thing needs to be made clear straight away. 3 million European Union citizens currently living and working in Britain are welcome here. They have been left under a cloud of insecurity by this government when their future could have been settled months ago. So, Theresa May, please, if you're watching, and I'm sure you are, give them the full guarantees they deserve today. Because if you don't, we will when we're in government. Since the referendum results, our Brexit team has focused, above all, on our economic future. That future is now under real threat. A powerful faction in the Conservative leadership sees Brexit as their chance to create a tax haven on the shores of Europe. A low-wage, low-tax, deregulated playground for hedge funds and speculators. A few at the top would do very, very nicely out of this, no question at all. But manufacturing industries would go to the wall, taking skilled jobs with them. Our tax base would crumble. Our public services would be slashed still further. We're now less than 18 months away from leaving the European Union. And so far, the Tory trio leading the talks have got nowhere and agreed next to nothing. This ragtag cabinet spends more time negotiating with each other than they do with the European Union. A cliff edge Brexit is at risk of becoming a reality. That's why Labour has made clear that Britain should stay within the basic terms of the Single Market and Customs Union for a limited transition period. It is welcome, at least, that Theresa May has belatedly accepted that. But beyond that transition, our task is a different one. It's to unite everyone in our country around a progressive vision of what Britain could be, but with a government that stands for the many, not the few. Labour is the only party that can bring together those who voted Leave and those who backed Remain, and unite the country for a future beyond Brexit. What matters in the negotiations is to achieve a settlement that delivers jobs, rights, and decent living standards. Conference, the real divide could not be clearer. A shambolic Tory Brexit driving down standards, or ours that puts jobs first and works for the many, one that guarantees unimpeded access to the single market, establishes a new cooperative relationship with Europe, a Brexit that uses powers returned from Brussels to support a new industrial strategy, to upgrade our economy in every region and nation, one that puts our economy first, not fake immigration targets that fan the flames of fear. We will never follow the Tories into the gutter of blaming migrants for the ills of our society. It isn't migrants who drive down wages and conditions, but the worst bosses in collusion with a Conservative government. They never miss a chance to attack trade unions and weaken people's rights at work. Labour will take action to stop employers driving down pay and conditions, not pander to scapegoating or racism. This whole issue is too important to be left to the Conservatives and their internal battles and their identity crises. Labour will hold the government's squabbling ministers to account every step of the way. And with our team, Keir Starmer, Emily Thornberry and Barry Gardiner, thank you, Keir, Emily and Barry, for all you do. As you can say, they're literally standing ready to take over when this government fails. When they fail to negotiate a new relationship with Europe that works for all, to help create a Europe for the many, for the future. That is our mission. The truth is that under the Tories, Britain's future is at risk, whatever the outcome of this. Our economy no longer delivers secure housing, secure, well-paid jobs, or rising living standards. There is a new common sense emerging about how the country should be run. That's what we fought for in the election. And that's what's needed to replace the broken model forged by Margaret Thatcher many years ago. And 10 years after the global financial crash, the Tories still believe in the same dogmatic mantra. Deregulate, privatise, cut taxes for the wealthy, weaken rights at work, delivering profits for a few, and debt for the many. Nothing has changed. It's as if we're stuck in a political and economic time warp. The Financial Times put it last month that our financial system still looks a lot like the pre-crisis one. And this isn't from the Financial Times, this other bit. The capitalist system still faces a crisis of legitimacy stemming from the crash. Now is the time that government took a more active role in restructuring our economy. Now is the time that corporate boardrooms were held accountable for their actions. Now is the time that we developed a new model of economic management to replace the failed dogmas of neoliberalism. That is why Labour is looking not just to repair the damage done by austerity, but to transform our economy with a new and dynamic role for the public sector, particularly where the private sector has so evidently failed. Take the water industry. Of the 9 companies in England, 6 are now owned by private equity or foreign sovereign wealth funds. Their profits are handed out in dividends to shareholders while the infrastructure crumbles. Their companies pay little or nothing in tax, and executive pay has soared as the service deteriorates. That's why we are committed to take back our utilities into public ownership. To put them at the service of our people and our economy and stop the public being ripped off. Of course, there is much more that needs to be done. Our National Investment Bank and the Transformation Fund will be harnessed to mobilise public investment to create wealth and good jobs. And when I've met business groups, I've been very frank with them. We will invest in the education and skills of the workforce. And we will invest in better infrastructure, from energy to digital. But we are going to ask big business to pay a bit more tax. The Tory approach to the economy, the Tory approach to the economy isn't entrepreneurial, it's extractive. They've not focused on long-term investment and wealth creation. When you look at what they do rather than what they say, it's all about driving down wages, services and standards to make as much money as quickly as possible. With governments, their government not as the servant of the people, but of global corporations, and their disregard for rampant inequality and hollowing out of our public services. The disdain for the powerless and the poor have made our society more brutal and less caring. Now that degraded regime has a tragic monument. The chilling wreckage of Grenfell Tower, and a horrifying fire in which dozens perished, an entirely avoidable human disaster. One which is an indictment, not just of decades of failed housing policies and privatisation, and the yawning inequality in one of the wealthiest boroughs and cities in the world. It's also a damning indictment of a whole outlook, which values council tax refunds for the wealthy above decent provision for all, and which has contempt for working-class communities. Before the fire, a tenants group of Grenfell residents had warned, and I quote the words that should haunt all politicians. I quote, "The Grenfell Action Group firmly believes that only a catastrophic event will expose the ineptitude and incompetence of our landlord." Grenfell is not just the result of bad political decisions. It stands for a failed and broken system, which Labour must and will replace. The poet Ben Okri recently wrote in his poem Grenfell Tower, "Those who were living now are dead. Those who were breathing are from the earth fled. If you want to see how the poor die, come to see Grenfell Tower. See the tower and let a world-changing dream flower." Thank you, Ben, for that wonderful poem. We have a duty as a country to learn the lessons from this calamity and ensure that a changed world flowers. I hope the public inquiry will assist. But a decent home is a right for everyone, whatever their income or whatever their background. And houses should be homes for the many, not speculative investments for a few. Look at the Conservative housing record and you understand why Grenfell residents are sceptical about their Conservative council and this Conservative government. Since 2010, homelessness has doubled. 120,000 children don't have a home to call their own. Home ownership has fallen. Thousands are living in homes that are unfit for human habitation. That's why, along with our Shadow Housing Minister, John Healey, and I thank John for his work, we're launching a review of social housing policy, its planning, building, regulation and management. We will listen to tenants across the country and propose a radical programme of action and bring it back to next year's conference. But some things are already very clear. Tenants are not being listened to. We will insist that every home is fit for human habitation, a proposal this Tory government voted down in Parliament. And we will control rents when the younger generation's housing costs are 3 times more than those of their grandparents. That is not sustainable. Rent controls exist in many cities across the world, and I want our cities to have those powers too, and tenants to have those protections. We also need to tax undeveloped land held by developers. And have the power to compulsory purchase. As Ed Miliband said, use it or lose it. Families need homes. After Grenfell, we must think again about what are called regeneration schemes. Regeneration is a much abused word. Too often, what it really means is forced gentrification and social cleansing. As private developers move in and tenants and leaseholders are moved out, we are very clear. We will stop the cuts to social security. But we need to go further, as conference decided yesterday. So when councils come forward with proposals for regeneration, we will put down 2 markers based on one simple principle. Regeneration under a Labour government will be for the benefit of the local people, not private developers, not property speculators. First, people who live on an estate that's redeveloped must get a home on the same site and the same terms as before. No social cleansing, no jacking up of rents, no exorbitant ground rents. And secondly, councils will have to win a ballot of existing tenants and leaseholders before any redevelopment can take place. Real regeneration, yes, but for the many, not the few. That's not all that has to change. As parties unite in paying tribute to our public sector workers, the firefighters who ran into Grenfell Tower to save lives, as Matt told us at conference yesterday. The health service workers caring for the maimed in the Manchester terrorist outrage. Those brave police officers who confronted the attackers at London Bridge. PC Keith Palmer, who many of us knew, who gave his life when terrorists attacked our democracy. Our public servants make a difference every day between a decent and a threadbare society. Everyone praises them. Everyone praises them, but it's Labour that values them and is prepared and is prepared to give them the pay rise they deserve and protect the services they provide. Year after year, the Tories have cut budgets and squeezed public sector pay, while cutting taxes for the highest earners and the biggest corporations. You can't care for the nation's health when doctors and nurses are being asked to accept falling living standards year after year. You can't educate our children properly in ever larger class sizes with more teachers than ever leaving the profession. You can't protect the public on the cheap. The police and security services must get the resources they need, not 20,000 jobs lost through police cuts. Scrapping the public sector pay squeeze isn't an act of charity. It is necessary to keep our public services fully staffed and strong. That is the Labour commitment. Not everything worthwhile costs money, though. Like many people, I've been deeply moved by the Daily Mirror's campaign to change the organ donation law. There are more than 5,000 people on organ transplant waiting lists, but a shortage of donors means that in recent years, only 3,500 of them get life-saving treatments they need. So that everybody whose life could be saved by an organ transplant can have the gift of life from one human being to another. The law has already been changed in Wales under the excellent leadership of Corbyn Jones and the Welsh Labour government. Thank you, Corbyn, and thank you, Welsh Labour, for that and many other things. And today, I make the commitment a Labour government will do the same for England. In the last couple of days, John McDonnell and Rebecca Long-Bailey have set out how we're going to develop the economic plans in our manifesto to ensure that sustainable growth and jobs reach all parts of our country. Thank you, John, and thank you, Becky, for all that you do. And the basis of their work is that no community or region is held back. So we will establish regional development banks to invest in an industrial strategy for every region of this country and every nation. But the challenges of the future go beyond the needs to turn our backs on an economic model that has failed to invest and upgrade our economy. We need urgently to face the challenge of automation, robotics that could make so much of contemporary work redundant. That is a threat in the hands of the greedy, but it's a huge opportunity if managed in the interests of society as a whole. Tom Watson spoke extensively about this yesterday, and he and others in the Shadow Cabinet are working hard on this. Thank you, Tom, and thank you, the Shadow Cabinet, for that. We won't reap the full rewards of these great technological advances if they're monopolised to pile up profits for a few. But if they're publicly managed to share the benefits, they can be the gateway for a new settlement between work and leisure, a springboard for expanded creativity and culture. The tide of automation and technological change means retraining and management of the workforce, and it must be centre stage in the coming years. So Labour will build an education and training system from the cradle to the grave that empowers people, not one that shackles them with debt. That's why we will establish a national education service, which will include, at its core, free tuition for all college courses, technical and vocational training. So that no one is held back by costs and everyone has the chance to learn. That will give millions a fair chance. Lifelong learning for all is essential in the economy of the future. The huge shift of employment that will take place under the impact of automation must be planned and managed. It demands the reskilling of millions of people. Only Labour understands and will deliver that. As Angela Rayner said yesterday, and thank you, Angela, for all the work that you do and the way you present things. Our National Education Service will be run on clear principles, universal, free and empowering. That conference is central to our socialism for the 21st century. For the many, not the few. During the election, I visited Derwentshire College in the constituency of our wonderful new MP, Laura Pidcock, one of dozens of great new MPs breathing life and energy into our Parliament. That college offers adult courses in everything from IT to beauty therapy, from engineering to childcare. I met apprentice construction workers. They stand to benefit from Labour's £250 billion National Transformation Fund, building the homes people need and the new transport, energy and digital infrastructure our country needs. By changing our economy to make it work for the whole country can't take place in isolation from changing how our country is run. For people to take control of their own lives, our democracy needs to break out from Westminster into all parts of our society and economy where power is unaccountable. All around the world, democracy is facing twin threats. One, from the emergence of authoritarian nationalism that is intolerant and belligerent. The second is apparently more benign, but actually equally insidious. It's that big decisions should be left to the elite, that political choices can only be marginal, and that people are consumers first and only citizens a very distant second. Democracy has to mean much more than that. It must mean listening to people outside of election time, not just the rich and powerful who are used to calling the shots, but to those at the sharp end who really know what is going on. I'll give you an example. The Greater Manchester police officer who warned Theresa May 2 years ago that cuts to neighbourhood policing were risking people's lives and security. His concerns were dismissed as crying wolf. Like the care workers sacked when they blow the whistle on the abuse of the elderly, or teachers intimidated when they speak out about the lack of funding in our children's schools, or the doctors who are ignored when they warn that the NHS is crumbling before our eyes, or blow the whistle on patient safety. We, Labour, are fighting for a society not only where rewards are more fairly spread, but where people are listened to more as well by government, local council and their employers. Some of the most shocking cases of people not being listened to must surely be the recent revelations of widespread child sex abuse. Young people, and most often young working-class women, have been subjected to the most repugnant abuse. The response lies in making sure that everybody's voice must be heard, no matter who they are or what their background. The kind of democracy that we should be aiming for is one where people have a continuing say in how society is run, how their workplace is run, how the local schools or hospitals are run. That means increasing public accountability and democratisation of local services. Andrew Gwynn was talking about that on Monday. Thank you, Andrew, for the work you do on that. It means democratically accountable public ownership for the natural monopolies, with new participatory forms of management, as Rebecca Long-Bailey was setting out in her speech yesterday. It means employees given their voice at work, with unions able to represent them freely, freed of undemocratic fetters on their right to organise. I promised you 2 years ago that we would do politics differently. And I have to say, it's not always been easy. There's quite a few who prefer politics the old way. But let me say it again, we will do politics differently. And the vital word here is we. Not just leaders saying things are different, but everyone having the chance to shape our democracy, our rights as citizens, as important as our rights as consumers. Power devolved to the community, not monopolised in Westminster and Whitehall. But let's take it a stage further. Make public services accountable to communities, business accountable to the public, and politicians truly accountable to those we serve. Let the next Labour government transform Britain by genuinely putting power in the hands of the people, the creative, compassionate, committed people of this country. Both at home and abroad, what underpins our politics is our compassion and our solidarity with people, including those now recovering from hurricane damage in the Caribbean. I sent a message to a family in Dominica last night. 80% of the island is destroyed. They don't know what to do. They need help and support. Damage all over the Caribbean. Floods in South Asia and Texas. And the horror of the 2 earthquakes in Mexico and the loss of life as a result of that. Our interdependence as a planet could not be more obvious. The environmental crisis, in particular, demands a common global response. That's why President Trump's threats to withdraw from the Paris Climate Change Treaty are so alarming. There is no contradiction between meeting our climate change commitments and investing to build a strong economy based on high-skills industries. In fact, the opposite is the case. Action on climate change is a powerful spur to investment in the green industries and jobs of the future, so long as it's managed as part of a sustainable transition. We know, tragically, that terrorism also recognises no boundaries. We've had 5 shocking examples in Britain this year alone, 2 during the course of the general election, and 1 in my own constituency. Both Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan, the mayors of Manchester and London, played a crucial role in bringing people together in the aftermath of those brutal attacks. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for Sadiq for what you did. What you did in uniting communities, the targeting of our democracy, of teenage girls at a music concert, of people enjoying a night out, worshippers outside a mosque, commuters going to work. All these are horrific crimes, and we all unite in both condemning the perpetrators and in our support for the emergency and security services working to keep us safe. All of our communities came together in Manchester and in London to condemn those attacks from all walks of life and all faiths. But we also know that terrorism is thriving in a world that, frankly, our governments have helped to shape, with its failed states, military interventions and occupations. Where millions of people are forced to flee conflict or hunger. We have to do better and swap the knee-jerk response of another bombing campaign for long-term help to solve the conflicts rather than fuel them. And we must put our values at the heart of our foreign policy. Democracy and human rights are not an optional extra to be deployed selectively. So we cannot be silent at the cruel Saudi war in Yemen while continuing to supply arms to Saudi Arabia. Or the crushing of democracy in Egypt or Bahrain, or the tragic loss of life in the Congo, which the media very seldom bother to report. And I say this today to Aung San Suu Kyi, a champion of democracy and human rights. Please do all you can to end the violence now against the Rohingya in Myanmar. And allow the United Nations and international aid agencies into Rakhine State. The Rohingya have suffered for too long. We should stand firm for peaceful solutions to international crises. Let's tone down the rhetoric and back dialogue and negotiations to wind down the deeply dangerous confrontation over the Korean Peninsula. And I appeal to the United Nations General Secretary, Antonio Guterres, to use the authority of his office to go to Washington and to go to Pyongyang to kickstart that essential process of dialogue. And let's give real support to end the oppression of the Palestinian people. The 50-year occupation and illegal settlement expansion and move to a genuine two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. Britain's voice needs to be heard independently in the world, and we must be a candid friend of the United States now more than ever. The values we share are not served by building walls. Banning immigrants on the basis of religion, polluting the planet, or pandering to racism. And let me say frankly, Conference, the speech made by the United States President to the UN last week was disturbing. It threatened war and talked of tearing up international agreements. Devoid of concern for human rights and universal values, it really wasn't a speech that should have been made. Our government has a responsibility. It cannot meekly go along with this dangerous course. If the special relationship means anything, it must mean that we can say to Washington, that way is the wrong way. And that's clearly what's needed in the case of Bombardier, where thousands of jobs are now at stake. Thousands of jobs at risk. A Prime Minister betting our economic future on a deregulated trade deal with the US might want to take a moment to explain how 220% tariffs are going to boost our exports from this country. So, let Britain's voice be heard loud and clear for peace, for justice and cooperation. Conference, it's often said that elections can only be won from the centre ground. And, all right, in a way, that's not wrong, so long as it's clear that the political centre of gravity isn't fixed or unmovable. Nor is it where the establishment pundits like to think it is, because they know everything, as you know. It shifts as people's expectations and experiences changed, and political space is opened up. Today's centre ground is certainly not where it was 20 or 30 years ago. A new consensus is emerging from the great economic crash and the years of austerity to when people started to find a political voice for their hopes for something different and something better. "2017 may be the year when politics finally caught up with the crash of 2008. Because we offered people a clear choice. We need to build a still broader consensus around the priorities we set in the election campaign, making the case for both compassion and collective aspiration. That's the real centre of gravity in politics. We are now the political mainstream. Yes. Our manifesto and our policies are popular because that is what most people in the country actually want, not what they're being told they should want. And that's why Labour is on the way back in Scotland, becoming once again the champion of social justice. Thank you, Kezia, for your leadership in Scotland. Thank you, Alex, for taking over. And whoever next leads Scottish Labour, I'll be working with them, delivering a unifying socialist message that will continue to inspire both south and north of the border. We saw that in the election campaign. We saw that in our summer campaign. We're going to be out there doing a lot of campaigning. That's why our party now has around twice the membership of all other political parties put together. Conference, we have left the status quo behind, but we must make the change we seek credible and effective. I hope we've left our own divisions behind, but we must make our unity practical. We know we are campaign ready. We must be government ready too. Our aspirations matched by our competence. During the election campaign, I met and listened to people in every part of the country, and I did the same over the summer. Impressed with the determination of so many people to try to make their communities better. Impressed with the hard work that people put in to try to deliver struggling public services. And I met struggling single parents, young people held back by the lack of opportunity, pensioners anxious about health and social care, public servants trying to keep services together, low and middle earners, self-employed and employed, facing insecurity and squeezed living standards. But hopeful that things could change and that Labour could make a difference. Many hadn't voted before or not for many years past, but they put their faith in our party. We offered an antidote to apathy and despair, to misery and depression. Let everyone understand this. We've come this journey not to let you down, because we listen to you, because we believe in you. Labour can and Labour will deliver a Britain for the many, not the few.
rainbow chorus in the singing of the red flag and Jerusalem.